Hey guys, and welcome back to another DJI Avata 2 video. And this week we're going to be looking at low light performance or flying the DJI Avata 2 at night. Now the last time I actually flew an FPV drone, I couldn't see shit. And that was with the Runcam Wasp with the Cinelog 25. And it was like no ambient lighting, so I just didn't bother flying at all. However, this will be different as we know the Avata 2 has a bigger and better sensor. It's the same one as the Mini 4 Pro and the Air 3. Also, I want to thank everyone who has been going to the community posts and voting, whether it's the next video topic or the thumbnails votings. We actually do have thumbnail testing now. I'm going to carry on posting that, but we're going to find out what happens with the thumbnail voting. So just let me know in the comments which thumbnail you see for this video. If you're new, hello, my name is Dimitrios and I create videos on drones, photography and everything in between, and it's a mixture of entertaining and educational content. Subscribe to stay up to date. Now let's take a look at the DJI Avata 2 and how it performs at night. First, let's start with tips on flying at night, because I do think this is important. Now, I'm not new to flying at night, but mainly when I'm flying at night, it's normally with the DJI Air 3, and we know that is a solid drone in the air. It's going to be very stable. It's a cinematic drone. I'm very confident in that drone's ability in flying as well as the image captured. However, with flying FPV, it is a little bit different. If you're a beginner, I actually do not recommend you try this until you build up your experience in learning to fly FPV. Even for myself, having flown for a while, I did not fly in manual mode. I actually stayed in normal mode and just let the drone do the work and be as stable as possible. Because it is low light, you cannot see as much. Which brings me on to the point of scope the place you're going to fly at first during the day so you could check for obstacles. Are there power lines? Are there trees? Is there anything that you need to be aware of that you may not see at night? Because if you went to that location without scoping out during the day, you may not see something, and all of a sudden this drone doesn't have sensors. You may hit it, it will fall, it will break, something bad will happen. So just make sure you check it out during the day before you go flying at night. If this is your first time flying at night with an FPV drone, find an open space, somewhere away from everything and everyone. And that way you have your freedom to fly and test it out. So if something did go wrong, it's going to land in a field somewhere and no one's going to be injured or property is going to be damaged. If you remember last week's video, I also mentioned about checking the weather. This is also a good thing to find out. Luckily, despite the storms that we have had in Toronto recently, there was no storms this night, but I did check the weather beforehand. Everything was good, very low winds and calm. So it was a good time to fly. When flying in cities, you do have a lot of ambient light, which does help allow light coming into the sensor, allowing you to see, but there's pros and cons with doing this. But having additional light, so if you are in a parking lot with big floodlights, that can help with you seeing when flying your FPV drone. Those are the tips that I have so far. If you have any other recommendations with flying FPV at night, just drop a comment down below. Now let's move on to how good the camera is with the DJI Avata 2. Now this is the same camera or the same unit as the Air 3 and the Mini 4 Pro. So I'm like, okay, this should be decent. This should be good. I should expect the same quality. However, after playing back the footage that I captured, it's okay. I don't think it's comparable to the Mini 4 Pro or the Air 3. I think those drones are superior in quality. Less noise is the main thing that I've definitely noticed. And even if you tried reducing the ISO, I don't recommend this because then even though you get less noise, you just cannot see anything and it's just not visible. So it's something that I did test when I was flying briefly. The main concern with flying the FPV drone is that you want to be able to see where you're going. That is probably the most important thing first, then the image, because flying the FPV drone is a lot more challenging at night compared to a cinematic drone. Let me know in the comment section down below what you think of the footage that you're seeing. I'll put one up for one shot in auto, sample footage shot in manual. As you can see, I don't think there is a big difference between the two. If anything, I think auto is better than manual, as there is slightly less noise, but not significantly much difference there. I also did take a couple of photos as well with the DJI Avata 2, and these are only JPEGs. The Avata 2 can only shoot JPEGs, but we'll cover more for photography with the DJI Avata 2. I know, very unorthodox video, but I want to cover it anyway because it's something that I want to know. Yes, this is going to be a challenging scenario because it's at night, but it was worthwhile to take a test. So if you want to check out that video next week on photography with the DJI Avata 2, hit the subscribe button for next week's video. Now let's talk about video settings that I was using when flying at night with the DJI Avata 2. Now the first one really is just stick it on auto and just let the drone do the work. The only two things I really did change with this is dropping the frame rate from 4K 60 to 4K 30. And the reason for doing this is this allows you to have a lower shutter speed to allow more light in. If I was to use 4K 60, the lowest shutter speed I could have is 1/60, which is still a little too fast and giving me a disadvantage when trying to fly at night. So reducing it to 4K 30 is better, allowing a little more light into the sensor. The other thing to play around here as well is with the ISO limit. So I kept this at auto ISO, but you can change the limit on how high the ISO can go. So default is 6400. However, you can increase this to 12,800. And that I didn't want to go higher to the max at 25,600. I don't think this was going to be ideal at all, and it didn't have any significant difference in the footage. The same with 12,800. I did test this and I don't see a huge difference. Now I also did try shooting in manual mode as well and fixing it to 4K 30 again and having a shutter speed at 1/30. I also used auto ISO for this. However, again, I actually thought shooting on auto was slightly better than shooting on manual. Manual, I can see a little bit more noise, but you can probably remove this using denoise features in the editing program of your choice. Now I did try using noise reduction DaVinci Resolve just to help this out a little bit, but I still think the quality from the Air 3 and the Mini 4 Pro is significantly better than the Avata 2. Now all the footage you see was shot in D-Log-M. I didn't think normal was going to be any better in my opinion. And with D-Log-M, you actually get more dynamic range as well. Now, if you were to adjust your ISO to reduce the amount of noise to 100, which is the minimum, you cannot see anything. It's actually pointless in flying the drone at 100 because it's that dark. And the first priority is you want to know where you're flying, especially with the FPV drone. So I didn't find this helpful. You could get away with 3200, but that's still a little too dark. I think 6400 was the right amount there for the picture, but it is a difficult one. There is a lot of noise still in the image, despite flying with a bit of ambient light from the city lights of all the buildings. I wanted to double check this as well by throwing it into my wardrobe, closing the cupboard door so it's pitch black. You couldn't really see anything, so the settings that are default are probably the ideal settings that you want to use. If you have flown the DJI Avata 2 at night, what are the settings that you have used? Put a comment down below and share your thoughts with everyone else in the community. Now let's move on to my final thoughts. Now as an experienced pilot, I have flown at night and I have a lot of confidence with the DJI Air 3 because it's such a solid and stable drone in the air. I'm not worried at all about that. Even the 04 connection is super strong. I know it's going to be very reliable and I'm not going to have to worry about that. That being said, the DJI Avata 2 is not as stable as the DJI Air 3. So I'm going to fly a little bit more cautiously, especially at night where visibility is very low and difficult to see objects, hence why I wasn't flying in manual mode. The Goggles 3 was also flagging me the warning message saying ambient light too low, and this was to do with the vision sensors underneath the drone. These downward vision sensors only work during the day, so at night, forget about it. But these are only for when flying low to the ground to help you keep stable flight above the ground. For the purposes of this video, I purposely flew higher, around between 200 to 400 feet at that limit, in order to be away from any obstacles like trees and power lines, and just fly in straight lines and smooth as possible, just to get the footage, sample footage that I needed. I did feel a little cautious as well when flying this, and not as confident with the DJI Avata 2. And this stems back to a previous video I made with freestyling with the drone. It just doesn't have the same flight characteristics as the freestyle drone I have right here. And you can check that video out if you haven't seen it already. The other thing to note is that the DJI Avata 2 is black, pretty much, grayish black. So flying this at night, you cannot see it. It doesn't have lights. The only lights you have is these LEDs at the back here. So ideally you would want to put a strobe on the top of this so you can see it at night. That would be my recommendation. They're pretty inexpensive. You should be flying with one anyway if your drone does not have any LEDs on it. The Mini 4 Pro and the Air 3 have LEDs allowing you to see them at night. However, with the Avata 2, it's better to purchase one. They're pretty inexpensive and they will strobe. I'll put a link in the description box below for the one I would recommend. The weight difference is also negligible, so I wouldn't worry like if it's gonna be like a gram more. It's not gonna change the rules or the C1 label. You're still within that limit. The one thing cool I did like is because when I was flying in normal mode, you can actually adjust the camera angle and divert it directly down 90 degrees and up 90 degrees, or I think it's 80 degrees. So it can give you a unique perspective. However, you have to make sure that you know your flight path ahead of time. So when you are flying that direction, you're not going to hit any obstacles. I wouldn't think the Avata 2 is suited for nighttime flying personally, because the image quality isn't there like it is during the day. And even comparing it with the Air 3 that I've flown, it's not the same. There's a lot more noise in it. It's not as a clean image. However, that doesn't stop you from flying at night. Just make sure you find a remote space and good lighting like a parking lot. The last thing here is just stick the video settings in auto and let the drone do the work, and then just concentrate on your flying and building up your confidence with flying at night with the DJI Avata 2. Remember to check the community post and vote for upcoming videos and the thumbnails. Next week we'll be looking at photography with the DJI Avata 2. I know this won't be the most popular video because why would you use photography? However, it is a feature on the drone, and I do think it's worthwhile testing. I want to know myself, is it going to be decent at all for photos? But we'll see what happens next week. If there's anything you want to learn about the DJI Avata 2, let me know in the comment section down below. Also, let me know what drone you're flying. Is the Avata 2 on your shortlist? Subscribe for more videos on drones, photography, and everything in between. And YouTube recommends you check out this video next.